The most dangerous moment in travel now is not turbulence. It is thinking you understand the rules when, actually, you do not. You step off a plane, you smile, you follow the signs, you think, I am doing everything right. And then, out of nowhere, a rule you have never heard of quietly says, no way, that is not how it works here. Travel in 2026 is full of these moments. Laws that feel completely normal to locals. But for visitors, they are literally mind-blowing. What used to be simple common sense, like what you pack, how you queue, where you stand, how you act in public, is now surrounded by legal landmines. And the crazy part is, most of these rules are not hidden. They are public, they are official, they are real. But they still manage to catch millions of travelers by surprise. Let us start right at the border, where the confusion begins before you even see a stamp on your passport. A lot of travelers from visa-exempt countries heading to Europe are only now realizing that the European Travel Information and Authorization System, ETIAS, is becoming a requirement for entry into the Schengen area. For years, people from countries like the United States, Canada, Australia, and many others could just show up with a passport and walk in. Now they need to apply online in advance, pay a small fee, and get permission before boarding. It sounds simple, but the insane part is how many travelers are still arriving at airports without this authorization, being told at check-in, sorry, you cannot board this flight. From the airline's point of view, this is just enforcing the law. From the traveler's point of view, it feels like a trap. You did nothing wrong in your mind. You have a legal passport, a ticket, a hotel booking, but in the eyes of the new system, you missed a step, so your journey stops before it even starts. On the other side of the Atlantic, the United States has its own version of this confusion with ESTA under the Visa Waiver Program. Millions of travelers are used to it, but the rules have become more strict over time. If you have visited certain countries, or if your circumstances have changed, you may suddenly no longer qualify for ESTA and must apply for a full visa instead. People discover this at the worst possible moment, when an online form, not a human conversation, simply says, authorization denied. Right there is the first big paradox. These systems were created to make travel more efficient and seamless. But for the traveler who does not know every detail, the experience feels like the opposite. Literally, you can follow all the old rules you grew up with and still be wrong in 2026. Now let us move from the border to your suitcase, because even your luggage has become a legal battlefield. In countries like Australia and New Zealand, biosecurity laws are extremely strict. If you arrive with undeclared food items, certain plants, seeds, or even soil on your hiking boots, you can face heavy fines. We are talking about people getting hit with hundreds of dollars in penalties because they forgot they had a piece of fruit in their bag, or did not clean their shoes properly after walking through a farm. To locals, this is completely obvious. They know how seriously their countries protect agriculture and native ecosystems. But for a first-time visitor, the level of enforcement feels insane. You think, it is just an apple. The law says that apple could introduce pests that damage an entire industry. So, for the system, that fine is logical. For you, it feels like a mind-blowing overreaction. Another layer of confusion is what you are allowed to bring into or out of a country in terms of cash and valuables. Many places have strict declaration rules for amounts over a certain limit, often the equivalent of $10,000. The issue is not that the rule exists, it is that visitors often have no idea that carrying cash, jewelry, or even high-value electronics across borders without declaration can cause serious problems. You can be stopped, questioned for hours, or see your money temporarily seized while authorities investigate. You may not be a criminal, but your ignorance of the rule does not matter. The law does not care how normal it felt to you. Then there is the whole world of duty-free limits. People load up on alcohol, cigarettes, and perfume in airports, thinking duty-free means limitless. But every country has specific allowances. Go over that number, and you can be taxed, fined, or have your items confiscated. Again, for locals who travel often, this is just another rule they have absorbed. For a once-a-year traveler, it feels like getting punished for shopping in the exact store the airport literally encouraged you to visit. Seriously, how confusing is that? Now, let us step into the streets, because the real culture shock in 2026 often hits when you think the formalities are over and it is finally time to relax. In countries like Singapore, public behavior is regulated in ways that absolutely blow the minds of many visitors. There are strict laws around littering, spitting, smoking in prohibited areas, and vandalism. Chewing gum for sale has been heavily restricted for years. For locals, this is part of why the city is so clean and orderly. For a tourist who casually drops a cigarette butt or forgets the smoking zone rules, the fine feels insane. The same shock pops up with alcohol laws across the world. In the Gulf region, for example, countries such as the United Arab Emirates and Qatar have detailed regulations about where and how you can drink. Alcohol is often only allowed in licensed venues like hotels, bars, and certain restaurants. Public drunkenness or drinking in non-approved public spaces can lead to arrest, fines, or deportation. Think about that for a second. In some Western cities, walking down the street with a drink in your hand is normal. In others, the exact same move suddenly turns you into a lawbreaker. Public displays of affection fall into this zone too. In some Middle Eastern countries and in certain conservative regions around the world, kissing or hugging in public is not just bad manners. It can be seen as an offense. Couples who do what they consider totally normal in their home country have found themselves stopped by police or security for behavior that the law or local norms do not accept. No warning sign pops up the moment you hold hands. You just cross an invisible line. Dress codes are another minefield. Visiting religious sites in places like Italy, Spain, Greece, Turkey, or many parts of Asia often comes with clear rules. Shoulders covered, knees covered, no revealing clothing. These are enforced at churches, mosques, temples, and shrines. And in some cities, even beyond religious spaces, there are expectations about modest dress that are backed by local regulations, or at least by social pressure backed by law. Tourists who show up in beachwear far from the beach, or in extremely revealing outfits in conservative areas, can be denied entry, asked to leave, or confronted by authorities. To the locals, this is basic respect. To the visitor who did not read the sign, it feels like suddenly being told their body itself is against the rules. The confusion gets even deeper when you add modern technology into the mix. Many countries now have very strict rules about where and how you can use drones. Fly a drone near airports, military areas, or government buildings, and you can get into serious trouble, fast. Some places require a permit for any drone use, even for tourists. Others ban it entirely in certain national parks or cultural heritage sites. The insane part is that travel vlogs and social media often encourage people to bring drones for amazing shots without explaining that in some destinations, the drone footage you see online could only be captured legally with local permits that average tourists do not have. Photography itself can be a legal trap. In some countries, taking photos of certain public buildings, border crossings, police or military sites is restricted. You might think you are just taking a cool shot for Instagram, but the person in uniform watching you might see a security threat. Suddenly, your camera is not just a hobby, it is evidence. Then we have rules that feel almost like they are designed to confuse visitors on purpose, even when they are not. For example, short-term rental regulations in cities like Barcelona, Amsterdam, or parts of New York City have become very strict. There are crackdowns on unlicensed rentals. Guests who book through popular platforms sometimes arrive to find that local authorities are taking action against the host, or that they are staying in a property that technically should not be operating. The guest is caught in the middle. No one explains every detail to them. They just know something is wrong, and they are suddenly part of it. At this point, you can see the pattern. The law is not trying to be your travel guide. Its job is not to protect your fun. It is to enforce order, security, culture, and in some cases, politics. When those priorities clash with your idea of a relaxing vacation, the law wins every single time. And this is where the real paradox of 2026 kicks in. We keep hearing that travel is easier than ever, that borders are smarter, that experiences are more personalized. But on the ground, for actual humans walking through airports, streets, and hotels, it can feel like being tested constantly without ever being given the full rule book. If you have made it this far and found the story interesting and insightful, do not hesitate to give me a like and a subscribe to show your support. All right, let us go even deeper into the mind-blowing part of this. Security and public order laws are stretching into areas of life that most tourists never used to think about. Take protest and political expression. In some countries, joining a public demonstration, even a peaceful one, can have immigration consequences. Visitors are sometimes warned that participation in political activities can violate the terms of their stay. You are there to sightsee, but if you get involved in local politics, the law sees you very differently. Or consider how some countries treat certain topics online. When you cross the border, your digital life may still be visible. There have been cases where border officers ask travelers to unlock phones or show social media. Refusing can lead to delays or denial of entry. Agreeing feels like handing over a piece of your private life. Either way, it is a lose-lose situation for the unprepared visitor. The legal right of a state to protect its security collides head-on with your expectation of privacy. Here is another example that genuinely shocks people. In some places, leaving a bad review about a hotel or a business is straightforward free speech. In others, defamation laws are much stricter. Harsh reviews or public accusations online can trigger legal complaints. You think you are just warning future travelers. Local law might see you as damaging a business or reputation in a way that is not protected. Then we enter the world of transportation rules that seem small, but can ruin your day. On public transport in some European cities, you must validate your ticket before boarding or immediately after. Plainclothes inspectors can check at any time, and if your ticket is not validated correctly, you are treated as if you have no ticket at all, even if you paid. The fine can be high, and arguing that you are a tourist who did not understand the system rarely helps. In places like Japan, there are unspoken but very real rules around noise on public transport, priority seats, and luggage size. While not always enforced by police, they are enforced by social pressure and, in some situations, backed by regulations. A suitcase that blocks a doorway, a phone call in a quiet carriage, or sitting in a reserved seat without qualification can quickly attract authority attention. For the traveler, it feels like getting in trouble for simply existing. For the system, it is maintaining harmony and safety. The most mind-blowing part of all this is how often travelers say the same sentence, "I thought I was doing everything right." They followed the habits, the norms, the common sense from home. They read a few blog posts, watched a few videos, maybe skimmed an official website, and still, they end up in a situation where the law sees something very different from what they intended. So what is really happening here? It is not just that there are more rules. It is that law, security, culture, and technology are merging into a complex net around travel. Every step you take, from the visa form to the airport scanner to the city street, is passing through that net. Sometimes you glide through without feeling it. Sometimes you get caught and you have no idea why. When laws are placed above experience, the message is clear. Your confusion does not matter. Your intentions do not matter. If you break the rule, you pay the price. That is the logic of the system. It might be good for security, good for public order, good for protecting culture and the environment, but it leaves the traveler in a constant low-level state of uncertainty. Is this allowed to film? Can I stand here? Is this outfit okay? Is this app legal to use here? Is my visa good for this city if I cross this border? Am I allowed to bring this medicine, this device, this amount of money? Every step that feels normal to you might be a potential violation in the eyes of a law you have never heard of. That is the crazy thing about travel in 2026. The more connected the world becomes, the more detailed the rule book gets, and the easier it is to accidentally step outside of it. So the next time you pack your bags and feel that excitement of going somewhere new, remember this. The real challenge is not just getting a cheap ticket or a nice hotel. It is learning how to move through a legal and cultural maze that is getting more complicated every year. Travel is still amazing. It is still worth it. But if you ignore the rules, or assume that your idea of normal is universal, you are playing a game where the house always wins. And somewhere, at a border desk, in a quiet office, or on a city street, a rule that seemed obvious to everyone else might be the one that turns your perfect trip into a seriously confusing, literally insane story you never expected to live through.